2 weeks ago, the United States officially recognized the legitimate government of Venezuela and its new president, Juan Guaido. We stand with the Venezuelan people in their noble quest for freedom, and we condemn the brutality of the Maduro regime, whose socialist policies have turned that nation from being the wealthiest in South America into a state of abject poverty and despair. Here in the United States, we are alarmed by the new calls to adopt socialism in our country. America was founded on liberty and independence, and not government coercion, domination, and control. We are born free, and we will stay free.
On the landing ground.
Thank you for joining us. You are listening to A Radio, and this is the Morning Moment. We're on weekdays, 11:45 Eastern. Follow us on Spreaker.com and click on the like button. I'm going to read to you this piece from a Canadian publication, a well-known publication in Canada. God knows why, in my opinion, but there you go. I often have it pointed out to me, little digs. Why am I not covering Canadian issues and views more? I always have a reply for this, because, well, it's being covered well enough already, I thought. That's a little tongue-in-cheek, because, as are the media, almost completely dominated by liberals here, it's almost impossible to see any unbiased reporting for the most part, and due to that, I don't see much point in regurgitating their propaganda. To that point, I felt that I had to do this piece with what I think is a classic example, an absolutely classic example of what I call unbiased Canadian media not. Here's the piece. The links will be on my site. It's from an organisation called Maclean's, and it's from macleans.ca. The piece is entitled Losing the Leadership of the Free World, and it's by Scott Gilmore. Now, before I actually read the piece, I want to remind those people, if they go back in time, to how the media really treated the person I'm going to talk about. I'm guessing that a lot of you can have a good idea of who I'm going to talk about. And just like in the UK at the time, this guy was treated with utter ridicule. Now, he's an elder statesman. Anyway, here's the piece. 30 years ago, it was easy to believe when Reagan said, that's President Reagan by the way, that America was a beacon of freedom. Nobody's buying it today. I promised I wouldn't comment. I'm not going to comment. The counselor to the president, this is the current president, Kellyanne Conway, stood on the lawn of the White House and spoke with reporters yesterday. When questioned about the president's latest racist statement, that's your words, not mine, she paused, looked at the journalist, narrowed her eyes and asked, "What's your ethnicity?" 30 years ago, some 200 feet from where Conway was standing, Ronald Reagan gave his final speech as president. It was his last day in office, and he marked it by bestowing 2 presidential medals of honor in this bygone bipartisan era. One went to Democrat politician, the other went to a Republican Secretary of State. Reagan took advantage of the occasion to share his parting thoughts on what made America such a, quote, great and special place in the world, unquote. It was a short address, and it is well worth reading if you have a few minutes. The first thing that stands out to me as a Canadian is how much easier it was then to claim the United States was a unique and shining city on a hill before the fall of the Berlin Wall, before the first Gulf War, before Afghanistan. Many people in the world shared Reagan's idealized vision of Americans as custodians of the free world. But since then, freedom, thankfully, globalized. The Heritage Foundation now ranks Canada and 10 other nations as being more economically free than the United States. Reporters Without Borders judges over 30 countries have more press freedom. By comparison, the Democrat ideals of Canada and Europe are not handicapped by gerrymandering, money politics and voter suppression. Now, a person is more likely to be imprisoned in America than anywhere else on earth. Only reading the piece, don't shoot the messenger. In 1989, a president could claim, quote, as Ronald Reagan did that day, that America was a unique beacon of freedom and opportunity, unquote. And, quote, no country on earth comes close, unquote. It was not only plausible then, it was a view widely shared everywhere in the Western world. Now, when President Trump makes a similar boast, only his most passionate partisans believe it. There is one particular claim in the Reagan speech, made as he described the exceptional nature of the United States, that is now especially jarring. Quote, you can go to live in France, but you cannot become a Frenchman. You can go and live in Germany or Turkey or Japan, but you cannot become a German, a Turk or a Japanese. But anyone from any corner of the earth can come to live in America and become an American. You know, it's so tempting to make a comment there, but I promised I wouldn't, and I won't. Even the people in Britain, Canada and Australia and New Zealand would have rolled their eyes at that boast, and now the majority of Germans and Frenchmen would likely raise their eyebrows too. But those lines are especially difficult to read in the midst of a week when the current President of the United States and his party are arguing foreign-born members of Congress should not criticize their new home. In a series of tweets, the President attacked a group of Democratic Congresswomen and told them if they didn't love the United States, they should go home, even though 3 of the women in question were born in America and a 4th had been a citizen longer than the First Lady. Conway followed up by calling the quartet the dark underbelly of this country. The new consensus on the right is that Americans are white and born here. Anyone else, even if they immigrated legally and even if they passed their citizenship exam and swore an oath of allegiance, even if they were elected by Americans to represent them in Washington, are simply guests who must know their place and behave accordingly. Reagan's Republican Party no longer exists, just as Jimmy Carter's party is almost unrecognizable from today's Democrat Party. But one would have expected that at least the bedrock ideals of the right and the left would remain. Just 3 decades later, you would think that the values of the Republican president and an icon thought so important and definitive that they would be the last he spoke before stepping down would endure in some form, but they haven't. Reagan left office boasting that America led the world because, unique among nations, we draw our people, our strength from every country and every corner of the world, unquote. And now his Republican predecessor openly mocks the notion. Before leaving the podium and the White House that day, President Reagan predicted that if the United States ever closed the door to new Americans, our leadership in the world would soon be lost. He was right. America does not lead the free world anymore, and in any country so deeply divided by partisan animosity, the President of the United States doesn't even lead most Americans anymore. Reagan added that Americans create the future and the world follows us into tomorrow. No, you don't, not anymore. And no, we don't, not anymore. Okay, that's the article. I'm done being Mr. Nice Guy. Where to start? Well, let's start at the beginning. Let's look at took over from Reagan. It was George Bush. Okay? There was a war. Iraq took over Kuwait, I seem to recall, and they had to be dealt with. That was a situation that Mr. Reagan didn't have to deal with. And Mr. Bush at the time also had to raise taxes because he had a war to fight, among other things. And then you have the next President of the United States, Bill Clinton. What to say about Bill Clinton? I don't think any of us need to say anything about Bill Clinton. And there were wars in Europe that America was extremely reluctant to get involved in. America was fortunate at the time to benefit from the collapse of the Soviet Union. It was because of them there was a collapse of the Soviet Union. Don't make any mistake about me saying that. But it was a different time, and people thought they could let their guard down a bit. I often talk about California, never having been, have no desire to go. If you have a chance to look back at old programs, I can give you one particular one which I'm very fond of, the Rockford Files. Don't watch the program, watch the background, and then look at the backgrounds today and draw your own conclusions. Ronald Reagan was promised a deal on immigration. The Democrats lied. Look at California today. Look at California in the period of the Rockford Files. That's all I need to say about that. Now, we'll go past Clinton to the next Bush. What did he have to face? 9/11. 9/11. An attack that previous presidents knew was coming, but did nothing. Nothing. And can I point out, just for the record, that Clinton was responsible for giving technology to North Korea, such as gyroscopes, by moving them from one department to the other, thus declassifying them and allowing them to be sold to North Korea, which is a key component for ICBMs, by the way, among other things. But I digress. George W. Bush had to deal with another war and Afghanistan. So for this idiot, and he is an idiot, to talk about America isn't a leader, look at Canada and then start talking about leadership. We'll come on to Canada in a minute. Let's move to another president, a real beacon of hope and prosperity. We are 5 days away from fundamentally changing the United States. Garbage. Obama. Garbage and Obama go together as far as I'm concerned. I was living in the United States at the time when he was running for election. I saw what he was going to be about. I was telling my American friends he's a socialist at best. He's a communist at worst. And they laughed at me. Didn't laugh anymore. And no, I haven't brushed over the financial crisis. The financial crisis was caused by Clinton, by giving free money and houses to people who couldn't afford them in the first place. It had to crash. And guess what? They're talking about bringing it back again. Was it Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, or Freddie Mac and Fannie Mae, whatever it's called? Two different organisations giving money to people for houses they could not really afford to buy. That was the main cause of the financial crash. Fake mortgages. And they knew it. And that's supposedly trying to be fair and make sure that all parts of society get, quote, a break, unquote. So we go back to Obama, having to deal, let's be fair, with the financial crash. And he did, to a point. He had shovel-ready jobs, but never spent the money. Where did the money go? The money went into large labour. That's where the money went, and again, also funneled back into his own party. He was protected by the media, who never wanted to investigate him and never wanted to investigate what he got up to. There are so many scandals under Obama that it's just not even worth talking about. And we all know what they are. So at that point, America had had enough. Obama was running down the country. Millions of extra people were unemployed. Stupid carbon tax was trying to be introduced through the back door. Energy prices were going through the roof. Americans had had enough. And what's wrong with being proud of your country? Oh, and by the way, while this was going on, Canada was doing quite well, thank you very much, under a Conservative Prime Minister who looked after energy and made sure that Canada was going to be self-sufficient now and into the future. All the time in the United States, all the democratically controlled states got further and further into debt. More immigrants came in, more squalor and disappointment for those states, increased taxes, etc., etc., and round it goes. Oh, and by the way, it was Obama who stopped adding the citizenship aspect to the census. Funny that. So when this idiot talks about a country not wanting to be followed, let's look at Canada. Let's look what Trudeau has done. Trudeau has destroyed the democratic system in our country. He has bypassed our charter, and not a word, not a whimper, nothing. He is using one province as a battering ram against another. He is raising taxes undemocratically at best, illegally at worst, one province higher than the other. He is subsidizing one province over the other. And guess which provinces they are? Yes, they're Liberal-dominated provinces. What a surprise. So for this idiot, for this independent journalist to comment like this is rose-tinted glasses version of history. And also, please don't forget that Trudeau has raised our national debt by an unbelievable amount, with virtually no chance of bringing it back under 10 or 15 years. Also, we've been inundated with immigrants, unquote, that no Canadians asked for or wanted. Let me tell you, Mr. Journalist, I don't even know what your name is, I don't care. If it wasn't for the United States, Canada wouldn't exist. It is that simple. And all you can do, and I speak as personally, is everything that Canadians want to buy is either illegal or not available because it comes from the United States. Every time you try and do something in this country, it's illegal or not available. And who's responsible for that? Non-stop liberals trying to separate and divide Canada from the United States. Do you think that's an accident? I don't. I think it's a policy driven from Quebec, from the francophone population in Canada, who hate America, even though their countrymen were saved by the Allies in World War II. Funny that, isn't it? Funny. But, that's probably a racist, bigoted, homophobic comment. And under Article 13 or something of the Human Rights Act, that's probably illegal now. Trudeau is a communist. Trudeau is a traitor to Canada. But this guy won't report it. He doesn't want to know. Because he thinks he's protected. Because he's part of the elite of which Trudeau's bought off. No, the truth is, the United States is a shining city on a hill that everybody wants to mirror. I can tell you for sure that many Canadians, probably the majority of Canadians, would like the American Constitution right now. Right now. How dare you not cover the fact that our Constitution is being bypassed? Shame on you. And to attack Donald Trump, the only person who's standing up for his country, the only person who's prepared to fight to protect his borders, just because you don't believe in his views, and to try and say that anybody who emigrates to the United States and naturalizes isn't an American is a lie. That's a bald-faced lie. A bald-faced lie. But then what do you expect from a liberal? That's all they do. Lies are truths and truths are lies. Obviously, he's taken a page out of Saul Alinsky. This is a shameful article, and as many of us remember, Reagan was attacked by the media at the time every single day. And back then, there were only 4 major networks. There was no Fox, and there was only one what they call, quote, right-wing commentator who was reaching any form of public. And that was Rush Limbaugh. And look at the number they tried to do on him and continue to this day. This is a fight for us all. In America, it's a fight for the future of the United States. We fight in October for the future of Canada and for the right for this person to actually post his views. I defend the right for him to post his views, even though he's a complete idiot. But I defend the right for him to do that. And that's the way it should be. You can find more at aradio.wordpress.com, where you can find links to us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, iTunes, iHeartRadio, Gab, and email. We are also on Spotify. Just go to the podcast section and type Canadian Politics with a twist, and you'll find us. We are continuing to reach out to you, so please pass on the links. Please click on the follow button on Spreaker.com. You can listen to all our morning moments at Spreaker.com under A Radio. That's EHRADIO, A Radio. And please click on the like button. And you can now hear a weekend review of our podcasts on WHBJ-DB, News Talk Radio. Join us and many others, and you can find all our podcasts and morning moments at aradio.wordpress.com. Click on the Morning Moments tab.